I heard about this shadow document. Apparently, you and several others cut some kind of deal or finally got McCarthy to cave in and give you guys something. Then we heard there's going to be a floor vote to abolish the IRS. Just tell us what's going on, because we're getting it all secondhand.
Look, we believed that Washington was broken. The normal system of selecting leadership in both parties is based on the redistribution of lobbyist and special interest money. Like, if you want to be the leader of your party, you basically have to raise and redistribute north of $100 million. And Kevin McCarthy was so good at that, he raised and distributed about $500 million over the course of the last election cycle. And so it creates a covenant that's not really built on trust or merit or vision, but trading money for political support. And we wanted to send a shock to that DC cartel system and to say, no, guess what? There's going to have to be a different way you get there. And the concessions we sought principally fell into like three buckets. Policy, we wanted specific bills coming to the floor. We wanted commitments on when they would come to the floor. We wanted adherence to specific spending levels with a budget resolution. And the organizing principle of our policy goals was really to make sure that we would never again get an omnibus bill like we had to vote on. That's just a total joke of a way of governing. Like, how can we sit here and honestly say that bills that are thousands of pages long, that spend $1.7 trillion, and that you get 48 hours before having to cast a vote is really legislating? It's not. It devalues each individual member, and it's insulting to our constituents to suggest that we even know what the hell we're doing when that's the way we run the railroad. So we had policy concessions. Second was procedure. Having those 72 hours to read the bill, having open amendments. Like, the youngest member of Congress was not yet born the last time the appropriations process went through regular order. And that just means, like, we should vote on the defense stuff separately, and then vote on, like, the education stuff, and then the health and human services stuff, and that it doesn't just all get mushed together so somebody can vote for a bunch of bullshit that you wouldn't otherwise approve and then say, well, I had to vote for it to fund our troops, right? That's the game. That's what the cartel builds, and lobbyists make $1 gazillion off of that. The final leg of the stool is personnel. Like, in order to enforce the deal that we got, we wanted specific people on specific committees in specific leadership posts. And, what's the saying? You rob the banks because that's where the money's at. Well, we wanted far more representation on the Appropriations Committee because that's where the money is. And a lot of Americans don't know what the Rules Committee is or why that's important, but it totally governs what we get to vote on and what we don't get to vote on. And so we demanded specific people and specific representation on the Rules Committee. I think we're going to be in a lot stronger position as a result. Like, the critique, I heard a few critiques during this process. One is like, this was chaos. You showed the country, how rough and tumble this is. And, you should have done this behind closed doors. To hell with that, man. Behind closed doors is where the American people have been getting screwed. And so I wanted to level my complaint on the House floor specifically. I wanted to cite the people that I was objecting to and their ascension to leadership. And so that didn't mind. And then, like, it's like, oh no, you burned your whole first week. There are days in Congress where the only thing we vote on is the renaming of one post office. There are days in Congress where the only thing we vote on are the rules that govern the next vote. And we take 6 weeks off every year for summer vacation where we do absolutely nothing. So to take 4 days to say, this is the policy, this is the procedure, this is the personnel that is going to drive the Republican team going forward seems like the best use of time since I've been there. So that was the general construct.
I mean, that's that's amazing. Why was it only 20 members of Congress willing to stand up?
Well, I mean, first of all, the frontline members, even the frontline, and when I say the frontline members, I mean members that are in districts that are 51-49, maybe even districts that Joe Biden won by a substantial portion, right? They had a loyalty to Kevin and an argument that was something like this. Well, Matt, if a guy goes out there and spends 4 years taking money from the lobbyists and giving that money to us, and then in the last minute you knife that person, no one will ever agree to be the valet for those people ever again. And we need that delivery system of resources. And so, like, it's not about how much we like or don't like McCarthy. It's about a system that we rely on to resource our campaigns. And I mean, that's a pretty astonishing argument, but it at least has a logical construct. And then, you know, there are people who fear disrupting the system. They think, look, I got here to Congress. I've got a staff that tells me I'm always losing weight and that my jokes are funny. Like, I go home and I'm the big cheese at the Rotary Club. And like, to every extent that I can have calm waters, the better. And anything that creates turbulence, I oppose. And that's actually a pretty big swath of the Republican conference and the Democrat conference. That is how the uniparty gets to groupthink. Yeah. And like, I hear all this time these geriatric senators talking about like, oh, the importance of these great bipartisan achievements. But so often in my life, like, the greatest moments of unity have been the worst for the people. There's a shit ton of unity to pass the Patriot Act. Yeah. We never thought it was actually going to be used against patriots. We thought it was going to be used against, you know, Arabs in faraway lands. You know, there was a whole lot of unity over the Iraq War. Everybody was for that. There was a ton of unity for the COVID lockdowns. There was a ton of unity for just printing money and sending it to people that weren't working. And so, like, whenever they're the bills that are like the major bills that have 95% support, that's when you need to be most worried at times.
You fear retaliation?
No, because we built the tools in that would allow us to have the accountability. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is going to go down in history as the last of the imperial speakers that centralized power and that then, you know, only doled out to members. Oh, well, you can go rename a post office. You can go create a task force. Meanwhile, the macroeconomic decisions, the major cultural and policy decisions, all get centralized in the speaker's office, where a lot of the staff all went to like Northeastern schools and are afraid of things like fried food and guns and, you know, people who enjoy those things, right? And Paul Ryan gave an interview on CNN yesterday that was really telling, where he even confessed, like, I had too much power as speaker. Like, way too many of those decisions were made without the people who had spent years analyzing policies, seeing which programs had varying levels of efficacy. And so while, you know, McCarthy, I think to his credit, at the end of the day, was willing to devolve a lot of that power, we reinstituted the one-member motion to vacate the chair. So for any reason, at any time, any member can go to the floor and call for a vote and to remove the Speaker of the House. And if 218 people vote for that motion, then the Speaker is gone. Now, I don't want to use that. I don't intend to use that. But I think having it on the books is healthy for the institution so that there isn't fear of retaliation for doing what's right.
Yeah, it is. The Speaker works for us, we, the people, and should be on a whim taken out. I mean, I think that those people are there to represent us. If they're not representing us, should be removed instantly. I love that idea. Thank you.
I mean, they should at least read the bills, right? If you're going to pass a bill, if you're going to pass a law, read them for frick's sakes.
One of the things Ian's brought up is that it should be illegal to vote on a bill that you didn't read. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, then we wouldn't be taking many votes. I mean,
it's good.
You know, yeah, exactly.
I like that.
You know, that there was a moment during all of this where people were like, well, Gaetz, if you and your 20 holdouts stay that way, then we won't even be able to organize. And I'm thinking, well, it'd give us a lot of leverage on the debt limit, you know, if we didn't constitute the House. So yeah, maybe sometimes, like, you know, a reflexive legislative body isn't what's good for the country.
Yeah, maybe less government is good, which I think historically that point is proven many times over and over again. But I think it's fair to say that there was also a lot of contention between you and a lot of other people. I know Donald Trump was also calling in specifically. Can you get into some of the contention that was happening there? Because it looked pretty intense. It looked pretty crazy. And there was also one specific photo of you sitting there, and there was a guy in your face. And it was a famous video and a famous picture that had the caption, "This is how we know the deep state exists." And you were kind of cool and standing your ground there. Can you tell us what was happening there behind the scenes?
Well, first of all, I don't get rattled when people yell at me in public because it happens like 3 times a week. So for a lot of members of Congress, like having your colleagues like upset at you or yelling at you, like that's deeply uncomfortable. And really, that did not affect my week at all, because what I knew is that our argument about how corrupt and how flawed the decision making is in Washington was getting out, and that it was breaking through. I think the contention was overplayed because of the cameras. Look, a lot of time, like the late Don Young almost like pulled a knife on me on the floor because I wouldn't vote for a bill that he had regarding like sea lions or something like that, and so there are always contentious moments, but usually if you just have that one C-SPAN camera angle and not the dynamic angles to see how people are interacting, you don't capture a lot of it. So look, any body where you got 435 people, you got a variety of different alliances and opinions and grievances that change over time. I think that one of the interesting arguments for term limits, and I'm very glad we're getting an actual vote on term limits because everybody talks about it in their campaigns, but they never vote on it, is that like the churn ensures that longstanding boomer grudges don't become a governing principle. Because like now, if somebody who's the lead person on financial services or on the Ways and Means Committee just hates you, like you're not going to get your idea through, and they can just outlast you. Whereas in a term limits environment, those grudges dissolve every time the Congress turns over, the legislative body turns over.
You mentioned the debt ceiling a little bit ago. You guys are about to vote on a debt ceiling?
In the next 4 months.
So my whole life, I've been watching them incrementally raise the debt ceiling over and over and over. And the thing is, it's from my point of view, it's supposed to be a ceiling that you don't print more money than that because that's the ceiling. So can we like make a realistic debt ceiling of like 1.4 quadrillion? Just say we're going to get there eventually. We can survive this amount. We're going to print another $7,000 trillion because I think we are going to. I don't know. Do you think maybe we won't? What do you think about that idea? Is that just too far out? What are you in?
Well, you're right that it's a joke because there is no real plan to ensure that we have a cap on that which we will borrow and spend. And I think the reason this continues to get worse on the books is because like regular Americans don't feel the pain of the national debt in a proximate way. Like if an illegal immigrant, runs over your family member, you feel that, right? If someone in your household loses their job, there's a direct impact you see. If the factory that your mom worked at goes to, Chihuahua, Mexico, that is a traceable thing. But so long as we're the global reserve currency, we're able to sort of exist in this era of expanding debt. Now we're starting to pay the price with rising inflation. But, there is no real lobby or special interest for less spending in Washington. Like that's the problem. Go on K Street, throw a rock, and you're going to hit someone who's paid a lot of money to get more spending in one way or the other. And so like the way we compromise is just by doing all of it, whether it's defense, non-defense, discretionary, non-discretionary, mandatory. And that is how like the uniparty works. So the demand we put with the leverage we had in the speaker's race was that the House of Representatives must pass a budget resolution at the 2022 spending levels. So roll this thing back a couple years. And it's similar to like in 2015 when they did cut, cap, and balance. And so here, all of what we do has to go under those spending levels. And look, it's going to mean some cuts in areas that I support, like defense. But if we've got to cut defense, maybe we ought to cut all the money we spend defending other nations far away, like Ukraine.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.